Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is Eric from eGetTech. I've had the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra 5G for a couple of weeks now, and I wanted to put it through its paces and run it through my usual stress test. That includes running ANTUTU benchmark, the 3D Mark wildlife stress test, as well as one of the most demanding games, which is GENSHIN IMPACT. So by doing these tests, we'll find out if the cooling system on the phone can actually control that high temperature on the Snapdragon 888. So let's get this test started, guys. And good thing to note on this phone, guys, it also has Game Turbo or the Game Center for the Mi 11 Ultra. So let's load it up. So let's add in and do the benchmark, 3D Mark. So let's start the first test in 3, 2, 1. Alright guys, so third and final test, it actually went down lower than 800,000. It scored 785,531. The temperature peaked at 50 degrees, so that's telling me that the phone is actually controlling or dialing down the performance in order to not let it go higher than 50. Hence you can see that flat line. So I'm not going to be using the coolers just yet, guys. I'm going to let the phone cool down and I'll run the 3D Mark wildlife stress test, because that test actually shows you the stability of the phone. It tells you the exact percentage on the stability of the phone in sustained heavy loads. So I'll run that 3D Mark stress test once without any cooler, then run with the Fun Cooler Pro 1, and then run it with the Fun Cooler Pro 2. So we can finally see which one of these Fun Coolers actually do a better job with cooling. So I'll let the phone cool down. Be right back, guys. Alright guys, so the phone has cooled down a bit. So let's start 3D Mark. And let's do the wildlife stress test. And I'll put it on the unlimited stress test. Alright guys, first test is done. Stability is not too bad, 94.2. The best loop score was 5,686. Lowest loop, 5,259. So not too bad, guys. In terms of temperature, it actually got up to 51 degrees. So I'll let the phone cool down and do the test with the Fun Cooler Pro 1. We can go ahead and run the 3D Mark test, and I've already attached the Fun Cooler Pro 1 over here, guys. So one of the problems with the Fun Cooler Pro 1 is that you have to position the clip so it doesn't hit the power button on the right, and luckily for the Mi 11 Ultra, the volume rockers are also on the right side, so there's nothing to hit on the left side. So let's go ahead and run the wildlife stress test with the Fun Cooler Pro 1 attached. Alright, so the second test with the Fun Cooler Pro 1 is done. So again, I'll let the phone cool down a bit, and then I'll run the test with the Fun Cooler Pro 2. Alright guys, so the Fun Cooler Pro 2 is attached. It's actually making very good contact with the back of the phone because this is a flat back. So it's not like the Dual-Core Cooler from RedMagic, where that's actually built for a curved back, or the curved back on the RedMagic 6 and 6 Pro. I forgot to show you guys, but I did install Shark Arsenal. So when you buy the Fun Cooler Pro 1 or the Fun Cooler Pro 2, you get this QR code where you can download the APK to install the Shark Arsenal. Alright guys, so the Fun Cooler Pro 2 is attached, and I'm going to be running the wildlife stress test. Alright guys, third test is done. Stability is only slightly better than running it without the cooler, and battery went down from 57 to 44. So as a bonus guys, I'm going to be covering the RedMagic Dual-Core Cooler in this test. So we've tested the Fun Cooler Pro 1, we've just tested the Fun Cooler Pro 2, and I'm going to be testing the RedMagic Dual-Core Cooler. Alright guys, so because of this huge camera bump, I can't actually place the cooler in the center because of the wings that we've got here on the left and the right. So I had to move the cooler a bit lower down so it's not exactly at the center. And as you can see, there is a gap between the back of the phone and the cooling pad. Because the dual core cooler seems to be built specifically to support the RedMagic 6 and the RedMagic 6 Pro. But if you have a flat back like on the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra, then you're going to have that little gap between the back of the phone. So I'm going to be running the test with the dual core cooler from RedMagic, and we'll see if it cools as well as the Fun Cooler Pro 1 and the Fun Cooler Pro 2. Choose Unlimited, and let's start the test. Alright guys, third test with the dual core cooler is done. Best loop score 5690, lowest loop score 5367. Stability is 94.3%. Temperature went up a bit high, 48 degrees. Not as high as the temperature though without any kind of cooler. Frame rate went from 18 frames per second at the lowest and 43 frames per second at the maximum, and battery went down from 86 to 74. So the dual core cooler does have some kind of an effect with the cooling of the phone, but not by much. So if you want the maximum cooling, then I guess it's the Fun Cooler Pro 1 and the Fun Cooler Pro 2 that you need to get. So now I'll let the phone cool down and we'll go ahead and do my GENSHIN IMPACT test. Alright guys, so starting the first GENSHIN IMPACT test without any kind of cooler, and this will serve as our baseline for the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra.
Oh, so sad. Don't push your luck.
Surrender and I'll be gentle. No escape! Be gone!
You are Don't get frostbite. What's the hurry?
You see the temperature on the screen, 42, 44,
Hey,
43.6. So it's a lot hotter in the top than the middle and the bottom guys. So I'll show you guys the graph later on. I'll let the phone cool down and I'll start the test with the Fun Cooler Pro 1. Alright guys, so for the second test, I've attached the Fun Cooler Pro 1. Now let me turn it on. And let's make sure that it's set to frozen. So let's start GENSHIN IMPACT. Alright, starting to record now.
Try not to enjoy this too much. Huh?
Don't get frostbite.
You're in for a little shock.
Okay guys, 30 minutes into the test using the Phone Cooler Pro 1. To be honest guys, it actually felt more comfortable playing with the phone if you attach a Phone Cooler Pro because temperatures are well in check. So if I measure the screen temp, it's only 38.5. On the earlier test without any kind of cooler, we were getting 44.4 on that part of the screen. So this thing is doing its job in keeping the phone cool. So I'll show all the results once the test is done, but I'll go ahead and move on to the test with the Phone Cooler Pro 2. Okay guys, so I've got the Phone Cooler Pro 2 attached, running for a few minutes, and it's 7 degrees Celsius at the back. Okay, so let me start the FPS counter.
Freeze! Don't get frostbite. Cool it.
Alright guys, 30 minutes in. So similar to the Phone Cooler Pro 1, things were kept pretty cool with the Phone Cooler Pro 2. My hands actually got a bit cold because of the fan blowing at the back, and the back didn't get too hot, so that's a good sign. So I'll show you the results later on because we've got one more test to go, and that is with the RedMagic Dual-Core Cooler. So I'll let the phone cool down and then I'll restart the test. Alright guys, so for the final test, I've attached the RedMagic Dual-Core Cooler, and of course because of these wings, I actually had to place it a bit further down the phone instead of right in the center. So I'm starting in 3, 2, 1.
Let it rain.
Cool it. You interested? This moment will be frozen in time. Freeze!
Let's spark things up a little.
Dodge this!
You're in for a little shock.
Freeze!
Surrender and you'll be gentle.
Dodge this!
Blitz.
Disgusting. This moment will be frozen in time.
Alright guys, 30 minutes into the test and I'm done with the dual-core cooler. So it does feel a bit hotter than when I used the Fun Cooler Pro 1 and the Fun Cooler Pro 2, but nowhere as hot as the baseline where we used the phone without any kind of cooler. Alright guys, so that was a pretty long test, and luckily the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra survives, it didn't melt down, and it's still in one piece. So for the ANTUTU test, here are the results. I didn't use any cooler with the ANTUTU test, but for the first test, I got 815,913. Second test went down to 802,164. And on the third test, we got 785,531. Temperature kept increasing between the tests, starting out at 43 for the first one, 47 for the second, and 50 on the last test. So it got pretty hot, guys. Now on the 3D Mark Wildlife Stress Test, here are the results. The highest stability I got was with the Fun Cooler Pro 1. It hit 99.2%, followed by the Fun Cooler Pro 2 and the RedMagic Dual-Core Cooler with a stability of 94.3. Without any kind of cooler, stability was 94.2. So in the 3D Mark Wildlife Stress Test, the Fun Cooler Pro 2 and the DualMagic Core Cooler didn't make much of a difference, but the Fun Cooler Pro 1 actually all but eliminated the thermal throttling. In terms of temperature, the highest was of course the baseline, that is without any cooler. It hit a maximum of 51. Lowest temperature was with the Fun Cooler Pro 1 with 43 degrees, Fun Cooler Pro 2 with 45, and 48 on the Dual Core Cooler. Battery loss was almost all the same, ranging between 12 and 13%. So here are the results of the GENSHIN IMPACT 30-minute test, showing on screen now. So the baseline, we've got lower than 50 frames per second average, which is 47.1, followed by the RedMagic Dual-Core Cooler with 49.9, so pretty close to 50 but not quite there yet. The Fun Cooler Pro 1 managed to help the Mi 11 Ultra get a 53.3 frames per second average, which is pretty impressive. And the winner here in terms of FPS is the Fun Cooler Pro 2. It managed to help the Mi 11 Ultra maintain a 54 FPS average. Now in terms of temperature, of course the baseline without any cooler would be the hottest. It had an average temperature of 49.7 Celsius and it hit a maximum of 52. Followed by the Dual Core Cooler, which is to be expected because that curved back of the cooling pad doesn't really make full contact with the back of the phone. The average temperature with the Dual Core Cooler is 45.7 degrees Celsius. While with the Fun Cooler Pro 1, the average temperature was 43.5. And the big winner here is the Fun Cooler Pro 2 with just a very impressive 39 degrees Celsius average. Now this is where things get interesting, guys. On the baseline, the phone actually used 5.9 watts of power. But surprisingly, with the use of the Fun Cooler Pro 1, the phone used 6 watts of power. And on the Dual Core Cooler, it was 5.8. And again, this took me by surprise because the Fun Cooler Pro 2, even though it had the best frames per second in terms of stability, it also used the least amount of power. It only used around 5.5 watts. So that amount of power is actually more acceptable than what we're getting on the ROG Phone 5. That phone actually used up 8 watts of power. So by basing it from these results, I can see that the Snapdragon 888 on the Mi 11 Ultra is actually more optimized than the one on the ROG Phone 5 because it can maintain good FPS despite using a lower power draw. So if I do some math here, all of these phones can run Genshin Impact straight for around 3.5 to 3.6 hours, so which is good enough for a 5000 mAh battery. And we all know how much battery this Genshin Impact game uses up. So there you go guys, I've tested all the coolers that I've got with the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra. Of course, I won't be able to use the Aeroactive Cooler 5 because that only works on the ROG Phone 5. So if you're going to ask me which cooler would be best for my phone, it's going to be this one guys, the Phone Cooler Pro 2. And not only does it run consistently cooler, when you get the Phone Cooler Pro 2, it actually comes with these clips that you can attach to the phone cooler. So you've got one that's flat, and you've got one that has a notch on it. So you attach it like so. So based on the manual, you actually attach these rubber clips if the phone that you need to attach the cooler on is actually pretty wide. Since the Mi 11 Ultra is not that wide, I didn't need to attach any of these additional clips. So this video actually ended up being a Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra stress test and a kind of a cooler comparison test. So now we know which cooler performs the best on a pretty hot phone. So let me know in the comment section down below which of these coolers that you've got or you're planning to get. And also just to conclude guys, even though the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra is not a dedicated gaming phone, it does have the Snapdragon 888. It actually lets you run any of the latest games with no sweat at all. And to add to that, you've got a pretty impressive set of cameras at the back, so you've got a very good all-around phone. So let me know if you want to see this Mi 11 Ultra against the 4 other gaming phones that I've also got on hand. So I'll go ahead and end this pretty long video. As usual, a sub would be massively appreciated. Please like and subscribe, hit that bell icon notification, and see you all in the next one.